Hello and welcome to the Money Marketing Podcast. I'm Kimberly Dondo, Digital Content Manager, and we are back again for our end of month podcast with the editorial team. So to start off, I'll let everyone introduce themselves, and we're very happy to have Katie back. So Katie, go ahead.
Thank you, Kim. I'm Katie, as Kim suggested, Katie Pigden, so editor of Money Marketing. Back from maternity leave, came back at the start of July. It also feels like I've never been away now, despite having been gone for a year. So nice to be back.
Yeah, we'll get more into that, but just let everyone else introduce themselves.
Mike Climbs, news editor.
Maria Nichols, feature editor. And Andy Newman-Smith, feature writer.
Okay. Thank you all for joining me again. So like we said at the beginning, Katie, you are back. So what was your time off like? Obviously, you were doing very important work in terms of like life important work. But also I want to know after that what it's been like transitioning back, and getting your footing. Has a lot changed for you in the industry, or is it same old, same old?
Yeah, so I've been off for a year. It seemed like a very, very long time when I was going off. I've only ever had a couple of weeks off at a time for a nice holiday or things like that. So the thought of being away for a year and not knowing what on earth was going on in this sector, which is hard enough to keep up with at the best of times, seemed a very daunting task. But looking after a child, the day job suddenly seemed a lot easier, much more easier to manage. The magazine, the website, the team, I sort of know what I'm doing with that. I always thought I didn't as well as I do, but potentially, having to look after a human, make sure that they're okay, they've got what they need. There's a lot more demanding things there. So we've got other members
no real
of the team
instruction manual.
Exactly. And if there was, I don't think they will have read it. And they're not going to play ball completely anyway. But I have to say, I think actually I've been quite lucky. He's very, very nice, very calm, happy. And yeah, it's hard to think that I've got a 1-year-old now that seems like a proper child. Like where's the baby gone already? So yeah, coming back, interesting, because I've sort of been trying to keep up from the sidelines and sort of seeing, but obviously nowhere near the extent that I would have been when you're doing the job day in, day out. And it's interesting speaking to people in the industry. You sort of go, so what have I missed in the past year? And everyone's like, well, everything and nothing, nothing's really changed, but things have. And so people just don't really know how, I guess, because you're dealing with those things and then you sort of move on and other things have changed. But yes, it's just fascinating. And one of the companies I spoke to was like, nothing's really changed. I was like, what? Nothing in a year? You've done nothing in a year? And they're like, oh, well, yeah, I suppose we did have a new CEO. And I thought, well, that's quite big news. So, obviously things have happened. I think there's no way that I'm going to possibly be able to sort of know exactly what I have missed in the last year, that the team will sort of do. But you do sort of fall back into it quite well. So although it was a bit of a daunting task, making sure I could log into various systems and all the standard tasks that you were used to doing, that you're suddenly like, oh no, I've been kicked out of this. Oh, can I remember the password? Oh no, I didn't have the login. I think I've just about got there. There's probably still the odd one somewhere that I won't know until I need to use that system. But oh God, I can't get in. But yeah, you do start picking it back up. And in a way, it's like I've never been away now. So although I know a year's gone and, a lot of things have changed, it's also, we're back in it. We're back in it now, back with the team. Obviously, everyone did a fantastic job while I was away. So I wasn't worried at all about what was going on, because I know it was being well looked after by everyone. Just really trying to get back into the swing of things now and sort of try and build up that knowledge again of anything that I've lost. Happy to start seeing people again. So I had a really nice response of when I told people I'm back and actually sort of some lunch meetings, where people aren't just throwing everything on the floor. That's such a difference now. So thankfully, now the little one's in nursery, that's more their concern of what he's eating several times of the day. And I can focus on some other things.
Well, I'm sure your transition will be quick. It's not as daunting a task as, like you said, raising a human. So for sure, I think, I think everything is going to go smoothly, and it has been so far. So yeah, and we're happy and excited to have you back.
Oh, thank you.
So let's kind of get into some of the top stories from July. And I think the story that stood out the most was, unfortunately, the very sad loss of Nutmeg co-founder Nick Hungerford. So there was quite a lot of response from that loss. And I just wanted to know what you heard from, people who may have known him and what the response has been to that story.
Yeah, Mike, you put a nice piece together actually, where we'd had some tributes coming through. It was very, as you said, Kim, very sad story. Only 43 years old. It doesn't feel like an age at all.
No.
Very rare form of bone cancer, and actually not long before we heard the tragic news, actually the team were all talking about a really nice article that we'd read in the Daily Telegraph, where he revealed his situation, and us just talking about little children. He had his young daughter, and that was the difficulty of thinking, she's going to live her life without him there. He obviously, did amazing things within financial services. Nutmeg's very well known, sort of that sort of shifting of the Dow and, coming up with new things. But I think a lot of people were sort of talking about the legacy that he will leave behind. He's literally set up a charity in his daughter's name, and it's for children that are, that have sadly lost a parent, and how they sort of deal with it. And he seemed very humble in the fact that he had built up quite a bit of wealth. When he sold Nutmeg, there was obviously some money behind that, and not everyone is obviously going to be in that fortunate position. And it just shows, though, no matter how much money you have, sadly, we can't protect ourselves from these horrible, tragic things as well. So I think the fact that, his legacy will live on with Elizabeth Smile charity. But the responses that we had, you could just sort of see on people were just really shocked by this news, and everyone sort of had a nice story. It seemed like no matter how big and important it seemed that he may have got, everyone was just like, there was this lovely man behind it that was obviously you could go to and sort of run your crazy idea past or something, and he would sort of tell you. So it was lovely to see that sort of outpouring. Very, very, very sad story. Undeniably our most read this month. And I think that just shows how many people he touched in one way or another.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. Mike, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, just Jeremy Fawcett, our colleague over at Platform, had a nice sort of sentence I thought I'd just read, was that, which I think encapsulates sort of his legacy and influence. Nick Hungerford was a mold breaker who brought Silicon Valley into the UK wealth management market at a time when it was still split between those who thought the internet would rip through their sector and others convinced that the personal touch was the only currency. So I thought that kind of was a very neat encapsulation.
Yeah, clearly someone who had a massive impact, and I think will continue to have an impact for a legacy. So yeah, very sad, but hopeful, I guess, for the future as well. So moving forward, we also had, as of recording this, we have now passed the consumer duty deadline date. So are people still in the stages of, I think we had written stuff months ago where like 80% of firms weren't prepared. Are people's responses now that they are prepared, or did it feel like people are still scrabbling to be compliant with the consumer duty?
I think, Kim, that's one fine example of where things have changed, but nothing's changed type of thing as well. So the consumer duty was something we were talking about long before I went off. So I think I remember us doing a cover feature at the time to sort of go, wow, what is this change in regulation that's happening here? And I think we had lots of advisors sort of go, this doesn't affect us. You know, we're already doing whatever. This is for the providers. This is for the other sort of companies. And I think, you know, it's going to be a case for everyone. This is probably the start of that journey. Although we, you know, Happy Consumer Duty Day was 31st of July, sort of the implementation. This is, you know, what's really going to be seen is the regulators obviously going to be watching how people have implemented this. It's a principle-based regulation. That's sort of how it's described. You know, it's trying to find what good practice looks like, but from the firms directly. So rather than completely mandate how you have to do this, there's obviously certain rules and things that they are following, but it's, you know, what are the companies introducing and how's that going to look like? So I think more advisors are aware of it now. There probably is still the debate, does it matter to us directly? Some sort of saying, well, we already had treating customers fairly, so is this any different? Was this a waste of time from the regulator? Obviously a lot of it will remain to be seen, but I think the whole thing is to obviously improve outcomes for the consumer. That's got to be a good thing. If you are a good player, you will carry on doing what you're already doing. If you were not so good, you know that someone's keeping an eye on you even more than they were. But I think a lot of the providers as well have been trying to offer support to advisors. So, you know, we know that obviously advice firms can span from one person sort of running their own business to absolutely massive networks where they've got sort of help for support with compliance and regulation and the whatnot. So I think the fact that providers are sort of realizing that actually they've got the two strands to deal with. They've got to be implementing what they need to do within their own business to ensure that they are compliant, but also how can we support advisors and maybe add value in that way so that they're already our clients, but, you know, we're sort of providing them with a service that can make their life easier. There's probably different stats, you know, wherever you look as to how many people are ready. You know, are they going to get in trouble if they haven't? I think the regulator's going to sort of take the approach of going, well, look, we know it's going to take a little bit of time to sort of get to exactly what we need. I would imagine, you know, in the months that sort of follow, we will see the regulator sort of say stuff like, this is an example of what good really looks like. And they won't necessarily tell other companies you have to do exactly this, but I think the companies will be silly if they don't. I think that's where we're going to see it play out, but the team will have a better idea in terms of some of the arguments that have been made up until this point and where we're sort of going from now.
I think what I've seen is just people finding it challenging on how to evidence that, you know, giving value to the customer.
Is it just another regulation burden? You know, that's what people are thinking. Oh, well, we're doing this already, but now we've got to physically show it in some way. I think a lot of people probably would have been doing that already. You know, maybe it's not so much of a headache as they think it will be. It will be interesting to hear otherwise. Obviously, at Money Marketing, we want to hear from advisors and you know, let us know how you're sort of finding that. Equally, the providers as well. So I think it is still one to watch. Yes, that date has been and gone, but that is probably just the start, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Maria, did you have?
Sorry, I just wanted to make an observation. I think to me, I'm just kind of getting the impression that this is good. This is like the straw that broke the camel's back almost, because I think advisors are just really fed up now. And it's been a huge piece of work. And I just, for example, I spoke to Kathy Harrison, Chief Executive of Spurs Group, and I want to talk about that a little bit later, but she was saying how in her capacity as kind of a compliance consultant running a compliance business, she's always been an advocate for the FCA in terms of, you know, they're doing this for the end customer. But she says even at this point now, she's starting to just feel like, this is a lot. And she's really hearing that from all of her advisors, really. And then I just wanted to flag that because, funnily enough, I've just been editing a piece from Dan Wilshire, who runs Wilshire Wealth. He's one of our columnists. And talking about consumer duties, the trouble is that there's a huge amount of room for interpretation. It's basically whatever you want it to be. It's a lawyer's dream and will play into the hands of big corporates with the largest in-house legal departments. He goes on, so read it, it's very interesting. But that bit ends with one thing's for sure: consultants, many formally employed by the FCA, will make a killing advising on their own ambiguous regulation. Ultimately, it's being for consumers will end up footing the bill. And I just thought that was really interesting, and generally what I'm hearing from
I think some of the difficulty will lie as well that advisors are sort of having to rely on these product providers and other big companies like Maria mentioned to actually do their bit so that they can then deliver for the end client, because let's face it, an advisor's customer knows what the advisor's doing, but they wouldn't know all of the things that come behind it and everything, every system that they're relying on or processes that they're relying on. So if something goes wrong elsewhere, that makes the advisor look bad, and then ultimately the clients might think that the advisor is at fault there rather than actually these companies and systems and processes and stuff behind them, where we've seen that before. I've read a lot of stories in the past about platforms, and advisors want them to make their life easier. That's what they're using them for. It's meant to make their life easier. But as soon as there's been any difficulty, any problems, that's made their life harder. And then obviously dealing with customers. So it's that sort of, advisors are in that difficult position that they just sort of feel like, all this burden is being placed on them, but they're still heavily reliant on what other companies and what other players are doing. And if they get it wrong, then it looks like advisors have got it wrong, equally if they get it right. So it's going to be really interesting to see exactly how this works and plays out. And like Maria said, everyone's sort of going to interpret the rules slightly different, because they're not like, oh, this is set in stone, this is the way you have to do it.
I think also, I know that you said that the FCA might highlight the ones who are doing the really good work, but I think also maybe people will learn from those who end up getting penalized as well, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And that's probably what the regulator wants to do as well. Well, look, here's what happens. We are clamping down on the ones that aren't doing this. We put this in place to make sure consumers are getting a better outcome. If they're not, oh dear. And we still have been doing some of the stories about sort of service issues, how long it's taking to process certain things, protection claims, whatever. So there's a lot that needs to be dealt with anyway. And so this is a good thing that people are going to have to look at those systems and those processes and things. We can't still have it that people are sort of saying, oh, we're experiencing, high levels of call volumes and stuff. Well, if that's happening every day, I think you might need to reassess what your sort of standard levels of calls are, or why are people having to call if they can't deal with things elsewhere. The sort of the hang up of the pandemic and things like that. If people are still using things like that as an excuse, I think there's a bigger thing that we need to look at and address, rather than sort of realize that, yes, obviously that was a very, very difficult time. Yes, there was obviously going to be some fallout from it, but now we're sort of back in a world and we're sort of, we should have been trying to pick things up a little bit and improving those systems, those processes. I think you're right. The regulator will obviously also be looking for, well, here's someone not delivering it very well, and this is what we've done. This is the repercussions of this. Don't fall into that same category.
Yeah, definitely. Also, I wanted to ask what everyone has been doing throughout July and what they wanted to highlight that they've been working on. So we haven't heard from you yet, Amanda. So can you let me know what you worked on in July that you want to highlight?
Okay. Well, I'm going to highlight my leader because obviously I don't do one in every issue. And when I do, I do like to highlight that because it is something different. It's a different type of writing for me, which I enjoy.
Yeah.
So with this one, I looked at male allyship for women in the advice profession. The reason I looked at it, I went to an industry event and it was one of the talking points with my contacts because they were telling me that they'd heard from female financial advisors who were saying, they basically took umbrage that men can be invited to some of these sort of, female in business events. And they were like, no, this is not fair. It should be sort of our space. But my contacts were saying to me, don't really get that because, in every business, there are men that help women in the industry. I've sort of had, in journalism, many male mentors, and I think I'd be horrified if they were sort of banned from an event, when they've helped me into the industry. So I think that sort of more progressive attitude is probably where we're heading anyway, as opposed to, this is a women-only event, only, women are allowed. I'm not sure I kind of agree with that because I'm kind of thinking when I when I joined money marketing, there were a lot of female-only advice firms who were dealing only with women clients, and it just seems a strange thing, Kim, to kind of cut off, half the population from your advice thing on a principle, essentially, isn't it?
Especially if they have families. What if it's a woman who has sons only? Then you're losing a whole other potential client base as well.
Exactly. And I do see both sides of it. The fact that, sometimes you do want, it's like as a woman, sometimes you want to go out with your girlfriends, don't you? And not sort of have the halves tagging along, you want to go at night. I do get that. But in the piece, I sort of talk about this little anecdote that I had about when I was at school. I went to sort of school in Hackney, comprehensive, and it was very sort of, all the kids are sort of, street, they're into, soul to soul and that sort of thing. You have to wear the right trainers. And there was me, I was sort of a bit of a punk. I'm still sort of quite into the punk goth stuff now. And I had my Susie and Banshees boots on, and a girl I didn't know sort of just said that I was just sort of lining up out the music room, and she said to me, "I don't like your boots." And then she went on to call me something which I can't repeat here. It was a derogatory term for a woman. And I just thought, oh my God, I've done nothing to you. I don't know you. And there you are judging me. So I'm kind of saying it's not just because we're women, it doesn't mean we're all allies. And
right.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
Amanda, to build on that, actually, I went to an all-girls school, and it could be some of the most horrific environment.
Oh, right,
I have some brilliant friendships from it, but also, you're right. Like, girls don't always necessarily support other girls. And, I think my nan used to say something like about, well, sometimes women are the worst bosses ever.
Yes.
And like, what are you saying? Like, as a woman, that's crazy. But it's that thing sometimes that, yes, there's been the argument of, okay, help other people up with you. But sometimes I guess some people have felt like, oh, I've got to this point, so I deserve it. And does that sort of create a strain as well? So it's an interesting one, because I sort of hope, obviously, we've got a lot of strong females on the team as well, which is nice. And I'd hope I'm not sort of judged as people going, oh, there's one of those terrible female bosses, so awful.
I don't think so.
I think it's like everything. There's good and bad of all, isn't there? But it's just sort of just because you're a part of a certain thing doesn't mean everyone is going to go, yeah, we're all completely on the same page here. This is fine. So like an all-girls school was sort of, it was quite refreshing when I went to a college that was mixed, of going, oh, this is a bit different as well. I
think for me, when you were talking about like the allyship stuff, I think in terms of, I understand people wanting a safe space, right, where they can talk, and I understand the perspective of some of those women who are like, maybe I don't want to have, other men from the industry here, because I think that they wouldn't feel, they're scared that they wouldn't be able to express, issues that they've had without someone invalidating that, right? Because they don't, seeing it from the male perspective, they don't want to be grouped in with those bad men, I guess, in quotes. I'm not saying man or bad, but they don't want to be grouped in together. So then they, in the end, will end up invalidating someone. But I think the men that would be invited to these events would be allies, and allies would know that it's not about them. They're kind of just there to support the people whose event it is, because at least that's my understanding as an ally for, like my LGBTQ plus IA friends, right? I'm there to, whenever I'm at an event that is, directed for them, I'm not there. It's not about me. I'm not going to express my views as a cis heterosexual woman. And I'm not going to impose and invalidate their feelings. I can just be there and listen and learn.
I think I've been to some of those events as well, where it has been sort of a woman focused event, either an awards evening or stuff like that, but there have been men there, and like you say, they've been championing, either maybe someone in their team or their leader or whatever it may be. And I think it's felt quite a privilege for them to be included in that. But like Amanda said, sort of seeing from both sides, we know that I've been to an event, as a woman sometimes, and you think, oh, they were so male dominated. And I think that's probably where sort of things have tried to shift, that we then go, okay, well, how do we address that balance? Do we then create these spaces or these areas that are mainly women and things like that? Or is it a taste of the own medicine of suddenly, you're coming to an event and you suddenly feel like, this is a bit alien or outsider or whatever. But it's an interesting thing to sort of look at it. I think you're right. The ones that are supporting and the genuine allies are sort of happy of how those arrangements and what's going on. But no, interesting piece as well, Amanda.
I found it funny, some of the comments on Twitter, but we don't need to get into them. It's fine. Some of the people being like, that is sexist. Okay, cool. Tell me how.
We're used to it, Kim.
Yeah, it's everyone wants to be experiencing trauma. It's so funny to me. But that's a conversation for, I don't know, another podcast. But Maria, did you want to expand a little bit more on what you were talking about with Kathy Harrison?
Yes, apologies for any
background noise. You're in a different location today.
I've just been tapped out the house. The juggle is going on, but that's interesting because that's something that I picked up on with my profile with Kathy Harrison, Chief Executive of Verve Group, and I just wanted to highlight that really because it was such an interesting talk. And I've written out this coming out tomorrow. But her company has just gone through a big restructure. So we were just talking through that, and she was basically telling me how she accidentally ended up with 4 different companies throughout this whole kind of evolution of Verve. Just woke up and realised she just had 4 companies, and so decided that they needed to be consolidated for various reasons. So she's been taking me through the journey of that. But yeah, she was just such an impressive woman. I loved our chat. I was so inspired. Just the whole journey of the company was so organic, and she started as this self-employed power planner on her own, and then just kind of naturally came across these problems and decided to fix them by launching different initiatives and different companies and brands. And it's just a really, really interesting story, and I was kind of blown away by it. And she also touched on the juggle. She's got a little boy, and how on earth did she or does she manage it all? I always find that so interesting. And just her way of working, it's just such a fascinating observation to see how people work and tick. And she could not be more opposite to me, my structured lists and just, trying to be super organized. And she said that her comfort zone was chaos, which just
I relate to that.
We're grateful for you though, Maria. I'm grateful for your spreadsheets and your lists.
It's just so interesting, isn't it, how people can be so different. And Kim, I think you and I have spoken about our different ways of working, and just the chaos. That just makes me feel so anxious. But hey, it's working, and she's completely smashing it. And just a really, really interesting chat. So check it out.
I saw her speak last year at Money Marketing Interactive, and I think that what I got from her was that she understands people, and I think she also understands that the people that work for her are kind of at the center of everything that she does, and that's pretty much what she's continued. I think they touched on it in Leeds in terms of their restructure as well, and I think businesses that do succeed are the ones that understand that their company is made up of these people, and it's important to take into account their needs as well. So that's one thing that I found quite inspiring about her.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's it's Natalie Bell, isn't it, who did the talk at MMI?
In Leeds.
I think she's Chief Engagement Officer. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that role in itself, to have that in a company and kind of promote the culture, and it's just that's quite unique in itself. I think it just speaks volumes about what kind of company it is. It's just something really different and really interesting, and she's an amazing woman.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's move over to Mike. What stood out for you? Mansion House stuff?
Mansion House stuff, yeah. So the government came out with a load of big pension reforms when I was on holiday, which is typical. I think Tom
Did they not know the pensions guy was away?
No, they know well. But
well, that was their intention, Kim. Oh, he's gone. Like nothing to see here.
Let's sneak something in.
Yeah, but they like published something like 10 consultations or separate papers or something. Some of them quite long. I think the two. I was on a Lancat webinar about this yesterday, and Tom McPhail sort of highlighted two big themes, which were pension consolidation. So the government wants to put everyone into we have so many, we have like 37 master trusts, thousands of like single trust schemes, and so to just make it more simplify it by consolidating it. And the other big theme was it wants to put people or pensions money into sort of illiquid investments. Okay. So things like property, infrastructure. And the only interesting thing there is that the government obviously has an election. They've talked a lot about levelling up. And we've borrowed a lot of money. The cupboard's a bit dry from all the lockdowns and sort of COVID, hundreds of, billions of pounds, hundreds of billions of pounds spent. So it's like, we don't want to borrow money. We don't want to raise taxes. Where is the money? Sort of pension funds.
That's scary.
But that might cut across with, trustees' duty to get their fiduciary duty to get the best return for members in terms of their money. So that's interesting. And so those are the two big themes: illiquid asset investments and pension consolidation.
And no mention of pension dashboard.
No. I did ask about the lifetime allowance, where the abolition of the lifetime allowance fits into it, and Tom McPhail says that it's a separate thing. So that big LTA change is a separate thing. The other big thing related from the Mansion House reforms, the other big thing which broke since the Mansion House reforms were announced mid-July on the LTA, was that the government is thinking of taxing death benefits. Okay. So a big thing as part of the pension freedoms were if you passed your pension on to someone and before you died at 75, that would be tax-free. Okay. But now they're looking to tax them. So that's quite a big change.
So could that be something that they announce in the autumn statement?
Well, they already have announced it.
Oh, okay.
In like a little sort of as a part of a bundle of things. It was like buried in a sort of treasury document. So they've done that on the very slyly. So it'll be interesting to see.
There were so many documents that sort of landed, Kim. I think actually even people that obviously do this as a job of going through all of these policy papers and looking, even sort of said, I'm going to need a bit more time than usual to get my head around what's just come out. I sort of have a separate folder set up in my inbox system of any government alerts. And actually, I've signed up to everything. So I get hundreds, far more than I ever will need. Every sort of tribunal, every sort of thing that goes in there. And on a daily basis, I'm trying to sort of filter out. On this one particular day, I was like, but all of these seem relevant to us. Oh no, just what's going on? Usually I can just go delete. Oh, yeah. There's one I might look at. No, that's still rubbish. Delete. And this one was just nearly everyone was saying pensions in some way or another, or obviously the amount of comments that we had of the Mansion House speech. So it was just sort of lots of things going, oh, hold on, there's a few interesting things to consider there. And I just remember seeing one tweet that I found quite amusing, and just someone said, oh, that's a nice little pension pot you've got there. Shame if something were to happen to it, And it was just sort of like, yes, okay, right. Well, what is actually going on here then? So, poor Mike, when he came back, was sort of tasked with, right, can you have a little look through some of those documents, please, Mike, and see what
I'm still getting my head around them. There's just a lot there.
Like I said, Mike, take some comfort in the fact that, people have been doing this for years and years and years and years, are also going, bear with me. So it might take a while.
Yeah.
Why not just be completely transparent? Is that
the other thing interesting I talked about yesterday was that he said that he thinks that what the government released is like the closest thing that will ever come to a coherent government pension policy.
Oh,
that all the things announced make sense, which is the first time I've ever heard that in all my years of writing about pensions, that what they seem to be doing, there's some joined up thinking.
Although, Mike, could we have the interesting thing there that obviously if we do have an election next year, if we get a different government in power, is this all likely to change again?
On the LTA, interestingly, yes, but on the pension consolidation stuff and putting people into liquid investments on the Mansion House stuff, no. But on the LTA thing, yes. So on the Mansion, as far as the Mansion House stuff goes, Lankow was saying that they think there's actually quite a lot of there's some of the sounds the government's making and policy that Labour's been talking about anyway. So, but on LTA, yes, probably there's more likely to be a move there. They think it's interesting.
Okay, well, I guess this is one that we're going to keep coming back to and see how it develops. Is there anything else anyone wanted to highlight that they covered in July?
So not a news story or anything like that, but just to try and get used to writing again. I did a weekend essay about premium bonds. The next draw results are out tomorrow, so I'm going to check if I'm a millionaire then. But judging by a press release I've received today where it says where the millionaires are based, I don't think it's going to be me.
Okay.
But I sort of highlighted how it's something that I've always had my entire life. My dad bought me my first premium bonds within months of me being born, and so those actual numbers are still in draws for me now. Obviously I'm not qualified to give advice, so I'm by no means saying that people should invest in them, although I think, Kim, you said that
I did. I did. So, I was already thinking about doing it, but I was abroad when I was thinking of it, and then I just forgot about it, so you made me remember.
For me, it's a good thing to sort of have as some kind of savings vehicle. But I was quite surprised. I sort of thought I was more just doing it for my own benefit, really, just to go, can I still write? I don't know why the premium bond seemed interesting at the time. And I think the rate was just about to change. So it's sort of, they don't give interest. You're entered into a prize draw. I'm sure lots of advisors obviously know this and do advise clients accordingly. But I was surprised at the level of interest that it seemed to create. There was quite a few comments on the story, people on LinkedIn. Suddenly I saw someone from NS&I had read it and said, this is great.
I saw that too.
This is by no means sponsored or anything like that. We haven't. So I wasn't expecting it to get to those people, but it's nice. That does show how much we are listened to sort of more widely as well. And obviously our audience, but yeah, there was a mixed response from advisors. Some sort of going, no, absolute waste of money. You'd be better off somewhere else. I did acknowledge that in the piece that, potentially my money could be doing better somewhere else. But for me, it was a personal connection. And I think a lot of people that do hold premium bonds have a similar sort of thing to it. They've either had them for however many years. I quite like that it's a form of safety net for me, that if I needed to, I can say, can I have that money back, please? And I could take it out if I had some kind of emergency or something that I wanted to get. But yeah, for just something that was just sprung to mind, I'll just write it, see if it's okay, hand it over to Lois and Kim. They can decide if they want to use it or not. I was surprised by the response. So it was quite nice to get back into it. So I'll have to try my hand at news and other features and things again at some point as well. But I thought I'd ease myself in with the weekend essay.
Yeah, no, I think it did resonate with people. I mean, it triggered my memory to be like, oh, that's something I'd been looking into. And I think, I don't know, for me, I think it's a part of the diversification of your assets, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I've got other things as well, but yeah, ended up buying some for my son as well, and he's won a couple of times already. My husband is so jealous. He's like, I've never won anything. How has he won twice? And he's a
lucky kid.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, like I said in the piece, I'm probably going to jinx it, but so far this year, every month I've won a prize, not massive ones, but the draw's coming out tomorrow. So I'm like, oh, I've said it now, haven't I? So probably won't get anything tomorrow, but I've enjoyed the run while it's lasted.
Yeah, well, we'll keep up to date probably throughout the year just to see how it goes for you.
Yeah.
So is there anything else that anyone is looking forward to covering, or is everyone just happy that we're now in August, quote unquote quiet month?
Yeah, or silly season, or however you want to sort of look at it. It's been one of those things as a journalist for years that you're like, oh yeah, August, oh that's difficult. Everyone goes off and this happens and this happens. How am I going to generate anything? And I don't know, in recent years, it's felt like it hasn't been as quiet as we've hoped or as we expected it to be. So I'm already sort of going, yep, we've got a couple of members off of the team. I bet something big is going to break and we're going to be like, oh, what is this? And, will they sort of slip out some of those policies then that they think no one's looking? No one's looking now. I don't think it will
be like last year. Last year was insane because I think we had I think that's when Liz Truss was.
Yeah.
Became PM for that period of time that she was. And then there was the mini budget that then rocked every industry, but mostly the mortgage industry. They still talk about it like they're having like Vietnam flashbacks or something.
Yeah. So I think there was that famous tweet actually at Headline Money Awards recently. Our host was sort of saying about, there was the tweet that, we've had however many prime ministers, however many monarchs, my child was only 4 months. And I remember reading that at the time because my son was 4 months. And I'm like, has this really happened in this short time? And, it was that thing of going, so obviously when I've come back and people going, oh yeah, nothing really has changed. It's like, well, that's not quite true, is it? Because actually a lot has changed in the world, in this country, in whatever, in everyone's lives. So yeah, I was relieved to probably not be part of that, but as you know, had a busy period myself as well. But it's just that every year, August, December, people go, oh, it's going to be quiet. There's not going to be anything. And then, so I think, we've enjoyed having sort of the summer break in terms of the magazine. So there's not been that pressure, but now we're going straight back into it with the September issue anyway. So, and we'll keep the content going. So actually, listeners, if you've got stories and you've got things, do still come to us, because then we can keep following it up that way.
Yeah, we still are uploading things regularly online anyway. And the September issue, when we get towards the end of August, we will be talking about that in our end of month for August. But I guess here I'm going to just use it to do a little plug for the magazine. Please do subscribe to the physical copy of the magazine on our website, moneymarketing.co.uk. And also you can follow us on all of our social media platforms and look out for our events. We have Money Marketing Interactive, which is coming in October, and we also have the Money Marketing Awards in September, and tables are still available. So if you want to be at the coolest event of the year, get yourself a table. But that is the end of my plug. And I'm going to say thank you guys for joining me again. And we're so happy to have Katie back.
Thank you, Kim.
And I think we'll be excited to have the rest of the team back, which, if you have noticed, there are some people here, they are on holiday because, again, it is that time of year. But I think at the end of August, we'll have everyone back. So yeah, keep posted for that one.
Brilliant.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.